All right, so today we're diving into something that's pretty interesting in the crypto world. It seems like everywhere you look, there's a new DeFi project or some crazy old coin promising the moon. But amidst all this hype, Bitcoin, this like quote-unquote dumb network, is still king of the hill. So we're going to try to figure out why that is. Hit that like button if you're as curious as I am, and share this with your crypto friends. Let's get into it.
It really boils down to Bitcoin's simplicity, which is kind of its superpower. One of the sources we looked at, FinShots, they highlight this idea from Andreas Antonopoulos, a big name in the Bitcoin space. He compares Bitcoin to a simple pipe. Its main job is just moving data around, no fancy algorithms or complicated smart contracts, just pure open infrastructure.
So kind of like the early internet, right? Just this basic foundation, and then everything else, email, websites, all that stuff was built on top of it.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Because the core was so simple, it allowed for a ton of innovation at the edges. Now think about something like your banking app. Every time they want to add a new feature, it has to go through this whole development process. It's slow, it's centralized, and you're basically at their mercy.
Yeah, it's like, remember landline phones? Getting something as simple as caller ID felt like waiting for a miracle. Makes you appreciate how far we've come. But this whole dumb network thing, the FinShots article mentioned some interesting historical parallels, right? Like even when things quote-unquote fail, it can lead to something better.
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of examples. Think about Usenet. It was one of the first attempts at online forums, but it was clunky and slow. Then email came along and just blew it out of the water. But even then, people doubted that the internet could handle complex multimedia. Then, boom, the web came along, and suddenly we're sharing videos and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Failing gracefully while succeeding overall. I like that. So it sounds like the key takeaway here is that because anyone can build on the internet or Bitcoin, that's what makes them so adaptable.
Precisely. Now, let's bring this back to Bitcoin specifically. Remember 2014?
Bitcoin had a pretty rough year back then, right?
Oh yeah, the price dropped by over 50%. But something really interesting was happening under the radar. Two crucial innovations were being quietly rolled out: Multisig wallets and HD wallets.
And those are actually huge for the rise of DeFi, which we'll get into later. But before we go there, I think we need to quickly explain the different layers of a blockchain. Otherwise, it's hard to see where these innovations fit in. By the way, if you're finding this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
Yeah, good point. Think of a blockchain like a four-layer cake. The bottom layer is the network itself, just computers talking to each other and moving data around. On top of that, you have the core blockchain layer. That's like the rule book that governs all the transactions and makes sure everything runs smoothly.
Gotcha. Then we have the scaling layer, which is all about making transactions faster and more efficient.
Exactly. And at the very top, we have the application layer. This is where we interact with the blockchain using wallets, apps, and smart contracts.
Okay, so multisig and HD wallets, those are built on top of the scaling layer.
That's right. Let's dive into why those were such game changers, especially during that 2014 period in Bitcoin's history.
All right, so multisig wallets, imagine needing multiple keys to open a safe. That's essentially what multisig is. You need several approvals for any transaction.
And that's a huge deal for security. Even if one key is compromised, the funds are still safe. This is how you can have things like shared business accounts or escrow services. It gives individuals way more control over their money.
Makes sense. Now, HD wallets, these were a big improvement for managing all those pesky keys.
Oh yeah, before HD wallets, every single Bitcoin address you had needed its own private key. Lose that key, say goodbye to your Bitcoin. But HD wallets generate all your keys from one master key. And that master key is linked to a simple seed phrase.
So you only need to remember that one phrase to access all your Bitcoin. Much easier to use and way more secure.
Exactly. And these two innovations, while they might seem small at first glance, they had this huge ripple effect that led to the rise of DeFi. But that's a story for part 2. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.
Okay, so we've talked about these wallet innovations, multisig HD wallets. Now let's jump into DeFi. Decentralized finance. It's like recreating all those traditional financial services, but without the banks and middlemen.
Yeah, DeFi is taking the principles of multisig and HD wallets and applying them to things like lending, borrowing, even trading. It's really about giving people more control over their money and making financial services more accessible and transparent.
So give us some concrete examples. Like what would this look like in real life?
All right, so let's say you want to earn interest on your savings. Instead of going to a bank with DeFi, you can lend your crypto to something called a liquidity pool. It's basically a pool of funds that users can borrow from. And the interest rates are set by algorithms based on supply and demand.
So you're cutting out the bank completely and letting the market decide the rates. And I'm guessing those rates are usually higher than what you get from a traditional savings account.
Often, yeah. Now, what about borrowing? Let's say you need a loan. In DeFi, you can put up your crypto as collateral and borrow instantly. No credit checks, no lengthy applications.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. No more dealing with the bank. Just put up your crypto and get a loan right away. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. It sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, there are definitely risks involved, and we'll get into those a bit later, but the potential of DeFi is undeniable. It's like opening up this whole new world of financial possibilities. Now, speaking of new possibilities, let's talk about altcoins. Remember how we were discussing the internet having this simple core that allowed for innovation to flourish at the edges?
Yeah, altcoins are kind of like that, right? They're like all the different apps and platforms that were built on top of the internet, each serving a unique purpose. Bitcoin was revolutionary, but it was mainly designed as a store of value. It wasn't built to handle all these complex applications like DeFi.
Right, so altcoins come in to fill those gaps. You've got Ethereum, which enables the creation of decentralized applications, or dApps. Then there's Monero, which focuses on privacy. Solana, known for its speed and scalability. The list goes on and on.
It's like a whole buffet of crypto options, each with its own unique flavor. But with so many altcoins out there, it's got to be a bit of a wild west, right? I mean, are there risks involved?
Absolutely. Just like in the early day of the internet, not all altcoins are created equal. Some are more centralized than others. Some have pre-mines where the developers hold a big chunk of the coins before they're released to the public. And of course, there are scams to watch out for.
So it's important to do your research and think critically before jumping into the altcoin world. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started.
Now, here's a question that often comes up. If altcoins are so innovative and diverse, will they eventually overtake Bitcoin?
That's a great question. It's like that age-old debate. Does the new shiny thing always replace the old? Let's explore that in part 3 of our deep dive. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. So we were just talking about this idea of altcoins overtaking Bitcoin. Will they actually, take over the crypto world?
Right, and one of the sources we looked at, FinShots, they actually take it a step further. They pose this interesting thought experiment. What if the U.S. government just decided to launch its own Bitcoin?
Their own Bitcoin?
Yeah, like a government-backed Bitcoin-like network. Would that be enough to topple the original Bitcoin?
That's a really interesting scenario. I mean, would people actually flock to a government-backed cryptocurrency, assuming it even embraced the core principles of decentralization, which is a big if?
Yeah, that's a big assumption, but even if we play along on that hypothetical scenario, Bitcoin still has some pretty major advantages that are hard to overcome. Like, for starters, there's the first mover advantage. Bitcoin's been around for over 16 years. It's built this incredible network effect. It's like the gold standard of crypto.
Yeah, it's like trying to launch a new social media platform today and compete with the giants that are already out there. Pretty tough, right?
Exactly. And then there's the security aspect. Bitcoin's core protocol has never been hacked. It's been battle-tested and proven to be incredibly resilient.
Plus, even with a hypothetical government-backed coin, wouldn't there be massive switching costs? I mean, it's not as simple as changing email providers.
Oh, absolutely. Moving away from Bitcoin would involve huge technical and logistical hurdles, not to mention the psychological aspect. People are comfortable with Bitcoin, they trust it.
So all of this basically adds up to a pretty powerful moat around Bitcoin. It's not that altcoins and other cryptocurrencies don't have their place. They definitely do. But they exist alongside Bitcoin, not as replacements.
Right. It's more like a diverse ecosystem where each player contributes to the overall health and evolution of the crypto space. Bitcoin is still the foundation, the bedrock. What are your thoughts on that? Leave your other opinions in the comments below.
I think the key takeaway here is don't get caught up in the hype cycles. Bitcoin's dumb network design, its track record, its network effects, all of this makes it incredibly resilient. It's a force to be reckoned with.
And while the crypto landscape is constantly changing, Bitcoin remains at the center of it all. If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about it. We try to go beyond the hype and give you the information you need to make up your own mind.
So what does this all mean for you? Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency. It's this groundbreaking innovation that sparked a revolution in finance and technology. And while the crypto world is evolving every single day, Bitcoin's impact is undeniable. What do you think about all of this? Leave a comment with your other opinion, and let's continue the conversation on the Other Opinion YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, this was an AI-powered podcast, so always do your own research. Some of the information could be wrong.
That's it for today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We'll be back with another fascinating deep dive soon.